song will be through, 'cause I know I'm on my last go round. All the love I could steal, beg, borrow, wouldn't leave all the pain in my soul. What is love? Only a prelude to sorrow, with a heartbreak ahead for your goal. Here I go, now you know why I'm leaving. Oh, I got the blues, what can I lose? Goodbye.
Sounds great. Yeah, man.
What is love? Only a prelude to sorrow, with a heartbreak ahead for your goal. Here I go, now you know why I'm leaving. I got the blues, what can I lose? Goodbye.
Oh man. Well, when I first heard that, I thought, well, that sounds like Cheryl.
Right,
It was.
Cheryl. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was from a record that we did called Moonlight Serenade for the King Records label in Japan, and it was that record. Because the concept of that record was kind of a vocal Uber group where you had guys from a couple of the guys from Take Six and Roger Treese from Voicestra and Cheryl, and it was just like this great group. And you know, for me as an arranger, it was like, oh, this is a kid in a candy store. You know, you got just go, just do. So that was Grant Geisman on guitar, and Kevin Axt on bass, and
Dave Tull on drums, or somebody else?
Well, it was funny because Dave was on it and I was on it, and there were some other things going on. And as I was mixing it, I started pulling things out, and it started swinging harder. And I pulled the drums out. Okay, yeah, pull me out, pull the piano out altogether. And I think I had vibes on, but I pulled the vibes out, pull this, and the only thing we left with was bass and guitar and voices, and it was just swinging hard, you know.
That's wild.
That's where it's going to stay. That's how it's going to live.
Isn't that interesting?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's that's interesting. Inspiring for me because I have this project sitting waiting for me to fix my vocals, and it's the band is thick, and it's music of the 60s and 70s and 80s, and I feel my inclination is to pull stuff out so I can sing with space, because I do that better, I think, and so that's inspiring. I'm gonna
Yeah,
go
it
for
doesn't have to be thick. That's what those sliders are for.
Well, you have some people here, Neil Rosengarden and
Oh,
Scott Whitfield,
uh-oh.
Joyce Glasgow. Do you know Joyce? She knows everybody, it seems like. She's from
Yeah, I met
Seattle.
her, I think. Yeah. Mhm.
And Otmaro Ruiz, he said,
Oh,
I've been his fan number one since I met him. That's what he said.
Maro is a sweetheart and a stupidly talented.
Ah, incredible.
Yeah.
He's incredible.
You know,
Um,
I want to be Otmaro.
wow, cool.
You know that his concept is so wonderful. I
Yeah,
mean, I am such a bebopper by, like by heart, by
yeah,
nature,
yeah.
and and that is so not cool now. I mean, it's like, and I'm now out of fashion, but I try to make up for it in my writing, and it does seem to. We were talking about that earlier. That always on the wrong side.
Right.
There is that dichotomy in that I just have, which is my concept here is not here, and I think maybe the reason is just Hendrik Merkens,
Yeah.
the harmonica player and vibes player, he is completely unapologetic for wanting to swing. It's just like, I don't have to impress you with all my chops. I don't have to impress you with how deep my harmonic concept is. I just want to go, that's what I want. And I kind of am with him on that.
Yeah.
I love swing, bebop. That's kind of where I live. So.
That's really interesting. Yeah. Well, but I mean, maybe that's why you're an arranger because you can get all of that stuff out, right,
Yeah.
from your head.
Yeah.
Yeah, and let's see. Cecily Gardner says hi.
Wow. Hello, Cecily.
Cecily, I can't believe you know friggin' everybody. Walking in the middle of Idlewild, she knows somebody. It's like
Yeah.
she,
She's a,
she's amazing.
in the middle of Kiev. That would be-
Probably. She and I are in this group. We have a 7-piece improv a cappella vocal group called Fish to Birds. And we've been in it for about 7 years. So,
Is that because it's neither fish nor fowl? Is that the?
no, what's his name? Eck. Who's the artist with who does
Oh,
the
Escher.
Escher, thank you. I knew it started with an E. Hey, I'm getting better. Anyway, so there's a fish that morphs into birds,
Oh, of course, yes.
and that's what we do. We morph. It's a really fun group, great group. Let's see, who else do you know? Dory Amarillo.
Oh, wow. This is wonderful to hear from these people.
Yeah.
I get to LA so now relatively infrequently. I every 6 months or something like that, or maybe even less. And I try to go out and see my daughter, and I try to,
Oh, cool.
and but not as often as I can, or I would like to. And I try when I do that, I call people and I say, I'm going to be in town from here to here, and let's see if we can wedge something in.
Yeah.
Well, usually, the last couple of times we've met, there's been a bunch of people that meet at. I can't get Korean food down here, so we meet at a Korean restaurant in Koreatown where it's long tables and everybody eats a lot and we have a good
That's
time.
good. Yeah, that's a good suggestion.
Yeah.
And so you and Cecily actually worked on a horn blower in San Francisco.
Yeah, I think we did. Yeah, I was running the music program there for Hornblower down here, or down here. So I'm still in LA in my head. In Malibu and what am I saying? Yeah, it was not Malibu. What's the Long Beach or San Pedro and Marina Del Rey, not Malibu.
Okay.
Marina Del Rey. They had locations in those three cities, and I was kind of the curator, as it were, of putting bands on boats for the entertainment. And I think she was deeply entrenched in the company was centered based in San Francisco.
Oh,
so
yeah.
She was working there.
Yeah. That's funny, man. Where are you from, Corey?
Portland, Maine, originally.
Oh, really? Yeah. Wow.
Mm-hmm. Land of bebop.
I'm from Boston, That's why
I didn't know.
For me to go to Berkeley,
I didn't know that you were from Boston. Boston, from the time I was like 3, was my favorite place in the world, and so when I got the first opportunity, I took it to go to Boston to go to study there. I got accepted at New England Conservatory on the piano side, on the music side, but my grades were terrible. My high school grades were awful, and so they said, "Well, you're going to have to do a year of some kind of catch up with your grades," and then Berkeley accepted me. So I said, "Okay, well, I'll go to Berkeley." And the rest is history.
I understand. Yeah, I had something similar. I can't remember. My mother unfortunately, my mother talked them into putting me on a higher level than they thought I should go into at Berkeley.
Mm-hmm.
And it was unfortunate, actually, because I really did need the basis, the basic stuff. So I kind of missed some of the basic stuff in my whole concept, although I liked 2 things at Berkeley a lot. I loved the arranging. Oh my God, I loved that whole thing. It was so beautiful. And then I also loved the camaraderie, because my dad was a sax player, so I had his group of camaraderie growing up, but that was my own, of course, in Berkeley.
It was a wonderful place. It was a wonderful place to generate that sense of community, and there was a fellow, Mark, his name was Lampariello. He's no longer going by Mark Lampariello. He's going by because he moved to Brazil, and they couldn't pronounce his name. He was I forget. I think it was not Joao, but no, who was the girl from Ipanema?
What's her name?
Astrid Gilberto. Astrid Gilberto said, kept calling him different names every night on stage. When she would introduce him. It was Mark so-and-so, and then Mark so-and-so. And they finally landed on Lambert, Mark Lambert. He said, you're Mark Lambert from here on out. And he kept it. So Mark and I were in the classical, I told you, more in the classical side of things. Yeah. There were about 3 or 4 of us, or maybe 4 or 5 of us that were really dedicated to the classical stuff. And he ended up, after college, joining a punk band, and then ending up in Brazil, and one of the guys that we were talking about community. One of the guys from that community ended up teaching at New England Conservatory, teaching theory and that.
And you ended up teaching at Berkeley.
I ended up teaching at Berkeley. Yeah.
Just right out of school.
I was very lucky, and it happened that I was. I just wrote. Talk about arranging. I just wrote for everybody, and so from the time I was maybe a junior, I guess, people who were teaching me were also playing my charts when they would go to some kind of function. I had written a 6-horn chart or something like that.
Yeah.
And so everybody sort of knew who I was by playing my stuff. And then when the time came to interview for a gig opened up, I interviewed for it, and they knew who I was. And I said, yeah, he can teach arranging, he can teach theory, he can do that.
Cool.
And I got the gig.
And you were there for, I can't remember what your bio said, 5 years, something like that?
5 years. Yeah.
5 years. Yeah.
Teaching.
Yeah, yeah.
And 4 years before that.
Yeah. Boston. What a great town, huh?
It's gotten so expensive.
Yeah, I know.
It's gotten awfully expensive.
Crazy. You should see where I grew up. Well, it was a small development for the soldiers who came back from World War II, and it was nestled in a corner like this. And Dedham was here and Needham was here. It was in Newton, in a place called Oak Hill Park.
Which is now fancy, isn't it?
It's now fancy because people, and these were just tiny, really tiny houses. And then, in later years, people started buying them up and then ripping them down and building up. But it's a really beautiful community, small, very small, intimate community. Yeah.
I didn't know that you and I had that in common. I didn't know that you were a Boston girl.
Yeah. Every time I go back there, I have this, well, first of all, I go back to 1975.
Yeah.
I just go there. I'm like, I'm a hippie again. I'm smoking pot. I'm hanging out with guys. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's just really funny. But I really love
looking for cans in Copley Square.
Exactly. Oh my God. But I think Boston has a great feel, but it has gotten super expensive. But I mean, most cities go through that, right?
Yeah, I'm afraid so.
So then what happened? I mean, you at Berkeley, did you start getting some notoriety from outside Berkeley, or did you get out of Berkeley first?
You mean to the transition from student to teacher, or
No,
after?
After.
No, it was. I had written, as I said, I had written a lot, and I knew this is going to sound funny, but I kind of hit the ceiling. I mean, I had done theater in Boston. I had written a jingle or two.
Yeah.
I had played with everybody that I wanted to play with. I worked with the Boston Pops. I did this. I did that. I did the other.
Yeah.
So it was like, okay, and I was 27.
Uh-huh.
So I said, I felt at the time, like I was a boxer who had trained and sparred and worked and did all of that stuff and never stepped into the ring for a professional fight. I felt that I was very well trained, but I never put it to the test. And so I was looking for the next step in my career. The next step seemed to be either New York, which was the obvious one, or Los Angeles. Nashville was really was there, but it was sort of out of the question because at that time, Nashville was completely country music, and now it is not. It's a different world down there now. But in 1984, 85, when I was looking, or 83, 84, when I was actually looking, it wasn't for me. And then the fourth option was Europe. And I got a gig. I speak German, and I got a gig in Germany in the summer times. So I had a chance to go there and talk with German musicians and American expatriate musicians, and then I decided that Germany and Europe, they were over Americans by the mid '80s. They'd had enough of us, and we couldn't offer them anything that they couldn't get out of Berkeley or North Texas or University of Miami, or some of those places. So they didn't need American arrangers or musicians there. And that was kind of like, okay, well, that's off. Okay, check. Okay, Nashville's off the list. Germany's off the list. New York was too difficult to live in at the time. And I'm sure you remember New York in the late 70s or 80s. It was not a pleasant place.
Yeah.
And So that left me one option. That left me Los Angeles. So I moved to Los Angeles in 1985, in the fall of 1985. That's how I got out there.
Yeah. So, and then, so you were, when you actually, before you left Boston, you had started on your kind of path, professional path
Yeah.
outside of teaching. And, yeah,
I
so,
had written, yeah, I had written a lot. I had
Yeah.
written for a bunch of people.
hmm So what happened in Los Angeles?
Well, it was funny. There was a show called Nightclub Confidential, which was it was at the Tiffany Theater, which was on Sunset, and a little equity waiver theater that was on Sunset. And the people involved in the show, Scott Bakula, do you know who that? He was.
Sounds familiar.
He's now the star of, I think it's NCIS,
Oh, okay.
New Orleans. But
Yeah.
he's done some films, and I think he did. What was the? He's done a bunch of film work, and he was also the in Star Trek. I think the Next Generation.
Okay.
Whoever
Yeah.
the captain was, and so he was in the show, and there were a bunch of people that kind of came through the show, and the show was very popular.
Yeah.
And everybody came to see this show. And the cool thing for me was that there was one light. There was one light left on, and it was a
A spotlight or something.
one. Yeah, what do they call the little ones?
A pin light or something?
A pin
Yeah.
spot. Yes.
Yeah.
It was I've been out of show business too long, but this pin spot was on my head for the entire show.
Wow.
And the stage was designed. They put a piano. They had a grand piano under the stage, and the stage was designed as the piano. So it was like I was playing the stage that happened to be this enormous piano,
Wow.
and it was like a film noir comedy based loosely on Gloria Swanson, and all of that kind of thing. Very funny, very campy, very great. Dennis Deal wrote the show. And I was a musical director for that. And as I say, this was 1986. And every gig that I have had in 1987 came from that show. I mean, like everybody came. Then, so who is that guy with the spotlight? Get him. And so that's where I met Cheryl. That's where I met Lainey Kazan. That's where I met, what's her name? Edie Adams, who I loved. Edie Adams, there was no pretense with her. She was very funny, and I loved her sense of humor. She and I get along very, very well. But as I say, I worked for a bunch of people in '87 based on the connections from that show.
Oh,
And
cool.
then, I'm thinking, wow, this is, Los Angeles is not a difficult town. I mean, the show, I won an award, and I was getting paid, and everything was fine, and life was good. And then 1988 rolled around, and there was nothing.
This is what we were talking about, the top of the road or the bottom of the road, or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was very well known and very broke at the time.
How do you deal with something like that? Did you kind of, were you trying to be humble, or were you trying to be
I was trying to survive.
show, pretend that everything was okay? How did you deal with that?
No, I not very well. It was a tough time, of course, and I had a quintet. Bobby Militello, the saxophone player,
Yeah.
Paul via piano, Joel Taylor.
Oh.
Joel was with me in the show. Joel played that show.
Oh, wow.
And he's, I think, probably the LA musician and friend that I've known the longest from my time in LA.
How interesting. That's funny. Yeah.
And
Joel, he's such a character.
he's just a again,
Stunning
stupidly
drummer.
talented. Yeah, I mean,
know.
I did a gig with him down here last year. It was a jazz festival.
Oh, really?
And he played every act. He played with Hendrik. He played with David Sanchez. He played
Oh,
with I mean, just these remarkable players in genres completely different one from the other. And he not only played the show, he drove the show.
yeah, yeah.
David
He's really,
Sanchez's music is very difficult, and he ate it alive.
yeah, I can totally believe that.
Yeah.
He's stunning. Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah,
Yeah, Joel's a bad boy.
yeah. So, okay, so you had a quartet,
I had a quintet.
quintet, sorry.
Yeah, and that was a blast. It kind of kept me sane through that time because
Now, were you doing
uh,
bebop?
no, I was doing a bunch of different things then. This was my time to kind of spread out and see what it was that I was as a
Yeah,
player.
yeah,
Because I didn't really, I have never considered myself a player. I've always considered myself a writer who plays, and I play all right. You know, I can play with a lot of people convincingly,
yeah,
and I can play in a lot of styles. But I'm not dedicated to playing in the way that, say, Otmaro is, or
yeah,
dedicated in the way that Joel is, or
yeah.
or Dave Tull, or any
By
of
the
those
way,
guys.
I'm sorry, Joel Taylor is here. Hi, Joel. Okay.
I'll give you that $50 I owe you just as soon as I get
Uh,
it.
sorry. But you're talking about playing. So you were more of a writer or arranger that played.
Yeah, I always kind of fancied myself as that, as opposed to and I had some playing ability, but I was much more. I was the guy in the library.
Yeah.
I mean, I was Doug Webb, great saxophone player. His whole thing is, you know, I never, we were at Berkeley at the same time. I never saw him. And the reason why he was in the practice room shedding, and I was in the library studying Beethoven or whatever. So we didn't really, you know, we didn't get to know one another. And I left all of my piano proficiencies for the last semester. You know, so you had all of this technical stuff that you had to do and pass in order to graduate, and I left everything until the last minute. And so my last semester at Berkeley, really, that was my time in the shed. I spent a good, no less than 6 hours a day practicing the piano. And if you do that for 14 weeks or 16 weeks, you get good, you get better.
Yeah, sure.
And I did. And that I took that. That was probably the time that my chops were at their highest ever, and I came to Los Angeles with that.
Oh, okay.
So yeah. I had that kind of in the, you know, again, as whatever it is I brought to the table, I had it at its peak kind of at that time. So I was playing. I got a chance to play with a lot of different people and really kind of learn what I liked and what I didn't like. First thing, just regarding LA musicians versus, there's always that thing, LA musicians versus New York musicians, or East Coast versus West Coast musicians. I remember, you know, I can't tell you how happy and grateful I am to have really kind of come of age as a player in Los Angeles. There was no better place to do that, and I'm including New York.
Yeah.
And the reason is you have a variety of style and a variety of the as Dave Tull puts it, the pool is so deep that, you know, if you're playing with a drummer who what he does most of the, like, for example, Joey Heredia.
Yeah.
If you're playing with Joey.
Excuse me, by the way, my brother-in-law.
Oh, I didn't know that.
His half brother was my first husband.
Ah, well, give him my best when you speak with him.
I will.
you're playing. We had do you remember Le Café?
Absolutely.
They called me one night. Some band had bagged on them, and they said, can you put something together? I got Jeff Berlin. So can you and Jeff Berlin do something? And I said, well, I've never played with Jeff, but I'm sure we could come up with something. So I called Bob Militello and Joey Heredia.
Nice.
And we had no idea what we were going to do. We turned up there and played stuff, I think Jeff sang. I think I played. I played Waltz for Debbie, and he sang the tune. I mean, but I don't see that. Or in the middle of you're doing some jazz thing, and in the middle of it, the drummer will put a big old Ringo fill, in the, and if you did that in New York, they'd kill you. They'd be, it would be this terrible sacrilegious thing to do. And in Los Angeles, it was not that. It was so much fun to have, you're playing the Continental, some corny tune, on a casual, and in the middle of it, Bob Militello sounding like Ornette, and just the juxtaposition of those things, and the spirit of fun and the sense of humor that was involved with it, let alone the chops involved to be able to do either of those things authentically. And that's the thing that if you didn't play the Continental well, if you didn't have as a piano player, if you didn't have your stride together, if you couldn't play a solo very well, if you couldn't accompany, if you couldn't do all of those things well, you were not called. But by the same token, if somebody turned around in the middle of a bossa nova and say, play like Cedar Walton, you were expected to do that too. And your stock went up the better you did those things. So at that time, I was very lucky to play with as a good example of what I'm talking about is Frank Gambale. I played with Frank Gambale once, subbing for Dave Goldblatt, and another great piano player. And it occurred to me at the end of the gig that I didn't really want to do that kind of music. I had to do that myself. I had to kind of, okay, I've played with that. I've done that. And I played that music at a very high level. And Frank was very gracious but wasn't my aesthetic. It didn't do it for me,
Yeah.
And what I have always enjoyed, I think more than anything else, is to accompany. I mean, that's why I've worked with a lot of singers, and a lot of singers like to work with me because I don't need the spotlight. I'm not interested in soloing, or I'm not interested in showing you how well I can do this or that. I'm really interested in backing the singer. And by extension, you're taking that to the next level, it's arranging, and then taking that to the next level, it's production. So for me, being a good accompanist, being a good arranger, being a good production guy or producer is kind of all the same thing. It just
that's really interesting. I'm really surprised we didn't work together while you were here. And
back to Dave Tull's thing, the pool is so deep. I just made a list before coming on. Christian, I know I'm going to forget, and that's the whole point of this. Christian Jacob, Rich Eames, David Arnay, Mahesh Balasuriya, Mike Lang, Randy Waldman, Randy Kerber, Mara Ruiz, Patrice Rushan, Billy Childs, Bill Conliff, Mitch Foreman, Greg Fillingames, Jeff Colella, Matt Harris. Those are off the top of my head.
Yeah, and there's more.
And
there were more from the old pool too,
And I'm sorry if I've forgotten anybody. It's just that the pool is that deep. Those are jazz guys. And somebody not me, but somebody else could make a list as long or longer of Latin guys and of R&B guys and of rock and roll guys. I mean, it just goes on and on and on.
It is. I always say it's an embarrassment of riches. We just have so many great musicians here, and you're right, in all styles.
And I miss them all, by the way.
Yeah, it's really fabulous. And Otmaro has a message here. He said, I'm so intrigued to know if you have integrated any Dominican-derived rhythms in any of your recent arrangements. Merengue, Dominico, Dominicano, Pambiche, etc. And it's scary to imagine, figures that Otmaro would ask this. It's scary to imagine your harmonic depth applied to those calisthenic patterns. Some of those Dominican piano players have the highest stamina ever.
Yeah, the merengue parts are they're athletic. The answer is I am doing that now. I have this concert coming up in February. If Americans can travel to Europe by that time, I don't know.
Yeah.
But if I can get into Germany, the school that I'm teaching at and running the music program for is the National University. I'm translating from Spanish. National University Pedro Enriquez Ureña. UNFU is the acronym.
This is the one where you're at now, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
And we have a great relationship, an exchange program with the Hochschule für Musik in Hamburg.
Oh.
So they've invited me to do this concert and during a thing called Latin Week. So I'm taking some of these Dominican rhythms. Pambiche, he mentioned Pambiche. I'm sending over the normal stuff, cha-cha-cha, a bolero. I probably will do, I'm not fluent enough with merengue to write it well. I have taken some of the ideas of merengue, rhythmic ideas, and put them with some kind of harmonic thing that makes it neither jazz nor merengue, but something else, a genuine fusion. And I'm working on that. So the answer is yes, but slowly by steps. Yeah.
Interesting. Wow, I almost saw into your brain for a minute.
Uh-oh, that's a scary place to go. I don't even like to go there.
That's pretty cool. That's pretty awesome. Yeah. And so I'm sure a lot of people look at where you moved and are like kind of drooling. It's like, oh my God, I can't believe he got offered a gig from there and he took it and he's living there. The Dominican Republic. I mean, what a gorgeous area. How did that come about?
I'm very blessed. If somebody came, the guy I didn't know came into my office. He was from some university talking to us about creating a relationship with the school and a exchange kind of thing. And he said he didn't know who I never met me. And he said, "You just look so happy." I said, yeah, I don't think I've been this happy in a very long time. I'm a happy guy. I came down here with Chuck Mangione about, I think it was 2002 or 3. I was working with Chuck at that time, and we played with the National Symphony. It was a wonderful band. I think Kevin Axe was in it, Dave Tull. Kevin and Dave and I played an awful lot together. And Don Elias was in that band. There was it was just a good band. And we played down here. And the promoter for that concert and I hit it off immediately. And he has become my partner and my business partner and my friend. I mean, we just became friends. And his son he had connections with the American embassy. So he said, why don't we get Corey to come back and teach arranging and theory at this university? We'll use the university as the hub.
Yeah.
Okay, good. So it worked out. I was a cultural envoy. The State Department said, because they were the government, the American government and the Dominican government were splitting my costs. So the American government made me a cultural envoy, and then I worked for them basically. And so I came down here, and then it was successful. It was supposed to be just a very short, quick thing, and it became very successful. More people than they had anticipated. And then about a year later, Silvestre, the promoter for the Mangione concert, called me and he says, listen, what if Onfu created a music department with you being the head of it? Would that be interesting to you? And I said, well, sure, but what's there? Well, the only thing that's there is the ability to do it. They have the legal, legally they can do it. They're licensed to have an arts program, and it's been lying dormant, and they want to do something with it. And you're the guy. And I said, okay. So I wrote. I had done a good deal of curriculum development at Berkeley, which is another. When I was there, I was on a team that did curriculum development. You know Peter Gordon, flute player? Yeah,
yes.
Peter was on that team. And he was the only guy that I knew when I moved to California, by the way. He was the only connection I had. And so I wrote the curriculum for Oom Fool.
Wait a minute. So first I want to know though, when you were offered, did you immediately go, yeah, I'd love to do that? Or did you kind of go, wait a minute, let me think about that? Because moving down there it's quite a distance.
Well,
right?
yeah, I mean, what was going on personally. I was in the latter throes of a divorce, and a difficult divorce, and so that part of it wasn't difficult to decide because I did want a change.
You want a fresh start.
Yeah, and I had again, much in the same way that I would when I left Berkeley, I was looking at LA or New York or someplace in Europe. I was looking at in Mexico. I was looking. There was a possibility in Mexico in Jalapa, and Thailand. I was looking there, and I put some feelers out in back in Germany and Holland, but I wasn't holding up much hope for that, and I wasn't really that interested in living there. I could have been convinced about Mexico, and I could have been convinced about Thailand, and then this call came, the Dominican Republic.
I see. Okay.
And so when that happened, it just made sense, and I said, yes, I'd be interested in doing it. But what does it mean? What do I need to do in order to do it?
Yeah.
So, well, you got to write. You got to come up with a curriculum. I said, well, if I'm going to do that, I don't want to use somebody else's curriculum. I want to use mine. And they said, well, this is not going to happen tomorrow. Write a curriculum. So I had already, I had sort of kept my notes from the days that I was doing it for Berkeley, and so I had a good running start. And I wrote the arranging core music arranging program, basic arranging program up until about 6 horns, and then the theory program, which is sort of I'm most proud of that. My theory thing is strong, and I have a good way of teaching theory that seems to work. And most people would rather get a root canal than take a theory course, and I've managed to change a lot of people's mind about that. So
That's
I've
nice.
softened up the theory
That's
edge.
nice.
Of
I just have to interrupt for 1 second. It's fun to interrupt you because because you allow me to. But the guy who was teaching theory when I was at Berkeley, this is another reason why I shut down on theory. It was Hal Crook.
Oh yeah.
Do you remember how Hal Crook spoke?
No, because I never had him, but I have heard stories.
He had a monotone voice for theory.
Oh, yeah.
It was, I can't tell you. It just killed me. It was really too bad that I missed theory back then. But anyway, I just had to tell you because you know, we had that.
We had that connection.
Okay,
Yeah.
go ahead.
So
But-
yeah, my guys, my students here now, we will be graduating our first class in October. They were supposed to graduate.
Your first class?
Yeah, yeah.
Wow, congratulations. That
Thank
is
you.
so cool.
Congratulations to
God.
them. Yeah.
Wow.
We will have newly minted Bachelor of Music guys running around.
Oh, that is so cool, man.
Yeah.
Are they people from the area only?
No, we have, I've forgotten what the stats are off the top of my head. There are about 5 different countries represented, about 23 or 5% are women. It's mostly Dominican males, but the demographics change, of course, every semester. And now with this mess that we're in currently with this COVID business, it's kind of it's reined itself in where most of the people are Dominicans. But it's I think once travel is allowed and once people feel comfortable traveling and that, then it'll open up a bit.
Boy, if I was in my 20s, I'd be right there.
It's a good place to go.
Who wouldn't want to live there and have a great program, you know? And what, I mean, it's pretty wonderful.
Well, it is pretty wonderful and it's unique. I mean, there's nothing like it in this country. And as I say, the quality is very high. We have the string players, for example. Most of the string players that we use are, not all of them, some of them are Eastern Europeans that came here after when Yugoslavia broke up. Some of them came here because there was work, you know. And the Dominican, as I understand it, the Dominicans were very smart by going there and knowing that things were going to break up and saying, listen, would you rather be in Belgrade in January or in Santo Domingo? So everybody said, I think the cold weather I've had quite enough of, thank you. So yeah, it's a beautiful place. The island is wonderful. Santo Domingo, I have nothing but nice things to say about Dominicans and the Dominican Republic. They've treated me, you know, I'm a guest in their country and they have treated me royally. So I would encourage anybody who's interested in coming down here to visit to do so. There's the beaches are great, the people are great.
Cool. Maybe tomorrow will come because he said he's only been there a few times. And he said, something tells me it's an interesting place with plenty of available musical talent, super robust local culture, perfect fuel for keeping the professional side going for a long while, plus wonderful food and friendly people.
Yeah, he's got it pretty much nailed.
Oh, and Gary Meeks is here.
Ah.
Meek. Sorry, Gary. I always add the S. And
Hello, Gary.
Joel Taylor says, congratulations.
What did I do? Yeah, I got on your show. I got on your show. That's what.
How about if we play something?
Christian Jacob says he has a great lick about Gary Meeks. Just made me think of it. It says Christian Jacobs Does that bug you when people call you that? He said, yes, it drives me nuts.
Yeah, I know. It's terrible, isn't it?
It drives me nuts.
That's not true.
So what do you want to play?
I don't know, man.
What are you in the mood for? Oh,
Well,
you can play the Vivaldi piece. That's fun.
okay, great. Nice. Yeah, my friend Sandy from Australia said sounds a little like the Swingle Singers.
Yes, indeed. Yeah.
But with a little Latin. I that was
Yeah.
unexpected. That was like, oh, cool.
Yeah. That was a fun project to do. It was a labor of love. I always wanted to do that arrangement, and it's difficult. It's a hard chart, and it's difficult to get 16 voices or 8 voices even to do it. But so I did it piecemeal. Do you know Elin Carlson? Do you know who she is?
No, I don't.
See, that's what I'm saying. That pool is just so big.
Yeah.
Elin is like a studio singer.
Oh.
That is got this ridiculous range, as you heard.
Yeah.
She's up high B flats and that, and then down to low G's. And with equal power and command. And she did all of the female parts and doubled them and sent them to me. And then I had Brian Bromberg. Brian played bass, and
Tom McCulley and Brian. Oh yeah.
Yeah, Tom mixed it, and we recorded the percussion. I played the piano, What else was on that? Brian bass. Oh, and then two singers from down here. Another composer, arranger who's about my age named Manuel Tejada, and Alvaro Dinsi singing, doing the bass and the tenor parts.
Cool.
Yeah, but it's fun to do that. You know, I had heard, of course, your friend from Australia is right. I was more or less quoting the Swingle singers, but I had never heard the Swingle singers do anything in Latin version,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I wanted to do that. So
Yeah, that's cool. What was the picture, the video, was that in where you are, or was that in Germany?
Most of it was here. The first part of the images that are in the more classical part of the tune are in Italy somewhere. But as soon as it goes into the Latin music, everything is in Santo Domingo.
There's a beautiful church there, whatever
Yeah,
that was.
there are several.
Beautiful. Yeah, very beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Are you making the videos too? These videos?
I mean, I'm assembling images really more than anything else. I've not gone into cinematography yet.
Uh-huh. So, are you, when you produce singers as well, right?
Yeah.
So when you produce singers, are you I don't know how to say this. Are you adjusting to everybody's style, each person's style? So do you do a wide variety?
Sure. I had done an awful lot of work with Cheryl, and we recorded in several contexts. One, when we would play as a band, I was usually the piano player, and the band was guys that I worked with, like Dave and Kevin, a lot. So it was very easy to sort of create a band vibe with that, in the same way that Tierney Sutton does it with Kevin and Trey Henry and Christian and Ray Brinker. So that vibe is there. And so when you're in that situation, you're basically, as a producer, you're just trying to recreate that and make sure that it gets it gets recorded correctly and well. But there are other times when, like, for example, I produced a record for Carol Welsman.
Oh.
And Carol's a piano player.
Yeah.
So I didn't need to play the piano on that. But we were trying to do something that was very, for her, different.
Which record was it?
Oh, I wish I could remember the name of it.
We'll go look for it.
It'll come to me.
Yeah.
She was saying that, like the jazz thing, she wants to make an out and out jazz record, or I felt that she should make an out and out jazz record, and do it in New York. Get guys that so that there's no, well, yeah, it's a jazz record, but you get these guys from L.A. As we were talking about that L.A. New York thing. And so I said, get New York guys. And yeah, but I don't know anybody. I said, well, yeah, but I do. So I called Louis Nash and Wallace Roney and the late Wallace Roney, God bless his heart, and Rufus Reed. Not a bad band.
Not a bad band.
And we recorded what I think is a wonderful record. And Carol sang great, interesting tunes. She played well. I mean, just, So in that case, it was, how do I make this more New York-y?
Yeah.
That was kind of my job, was to make it as jazzy as we could make it, And then there were other instances, for example, where back with Cheryl, we did a record we did 2 records in New York, both with Kenny Barron, and that was, the first one was a little bigger production. There was Fathead Newman was on it, Chuck Mangione was on it. That we had a bunch of people coming and going on that record. Patitucci played. I think it was Patitucci, Louis Nash, Kenny Barron was the rhythm section, and then the horns were Mangione and Fathead Newman. And then we had guys from Take Six joined in on a couple of tunes, or on a tune. And then there was another record that was again, it was just more of a duet record, really, or trio record with Kenny Barron and Dog, what's his name? Doghouse, Bulldog, rather. It'll come to me, bass player. And so there were, somebody asks me to produce something, it really is a question of what is it that you want? And what do you want it, where is it that you want to go? What kind of music, what are you trying to say? It all starts with the singer, and it all ends with the singer. It's you're paying attention to what the singer needs, you make suggestions. You should do this in a little lower key. You should do this in maybe approach it this way. Try it in this type of manner that you maybe hadn't thought of before. And I think it has been my experience that I don't think I've ever had a singer say, no, that's not what I do. I'm going to do it my way. I've never had anybody.
That's a good sign.
Yeah, even difficult singers will at least, say, try it, and say, well, gee, that works, or I'm not comfortable doing that. Yeah. And that's a perfectly legitimate thing, to say, and certainly a legitimate thing for a producer to hear. But I think every singer, working with singers, everyone is different. Kevin Mahogany was brilliant to work with. We did duo stuff. We did a lot of duo playing. And he called me to do like a pops thing with the I wrote 3 or 4 arrangements for the Kansas City Pops Orchestra.
That would be nice.
It was wonderful. Yeah, and he was always a joy to work with. So for me, there was never ever an issue, and I think eventually it all comes down to respect. The singer has got to understand that I'm coming from a point of view of respecting them and trying to make them as good as they can be, and they have to have a certain amount of faith in me to say, well, he knows what he's talking about, so let's give him a shot.
Yeah. Comes to mind. Are you familiar with Tim Weston?
No.
Are you familiar with? Sorry, Tim. Jonathan and Darlene Edwards.
Oh God, of course.
Okay, so his parents were Paul Weston and Joe Stafford.
Oh, I had no idea.
Yeah, he lives in LA. He's a guitarist and arranger, composer, and producer, and he produced several albums. One was for Japan, and I talk about it a lot because it's just one of my favorite albums. But I'm going to write down to send you something to listen to.
Please, yeah.
Because I'll tell you about it. So this one project he did was a tribute to Rodgers and Hammerstein. And it was with a full orchestra, and each song was done by a different arranger and featured a different artist on it. And his partner also is Shelby Flint. You probably know her, right?
Yeah, she wrote a song. I arranged for Pops Orchestra. I arranged one of her tunes, Something We May Never Know.
That's one of my very favorite, and I also have it for orchestra because it's an orchestra song, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
gorgeous song. Um, so they're partners, and she was on the record also with Dori Kaimi. And
Mm.
but two of my favorite cuts was Nan Schwartz wrote for Mark Murphy on "This Nearly Was Mine." You can just imagine, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
he spoke first, over the orchestra, and then he said, "Oh, it was gorgeous."
yeah.
And then
She's a great writer.
she's great. She
Yeah.
really is great. And the other one was Van Dyke Parks. And the person who ended up singing, there was supposed to be a rock singer on it, which I never asked him who that was supposed to be. But anyway, at the last minute, they decided no, and it turned out to be Nancy King. Are you familiar
Nancy,
with Nancy King?
I know the name. I don't know why I'm blanking on.
Okay, just as a reminder, Nancy King is somebody who is like, for me, huge, but she's not like a big name, but kind of in my tribe. She lives in Oregon. She's kind of one of those subtle and incredibly great jazz singers. And interesting, she never really read music. So she never actually changed keys for herself. So she would always do a song in whatever key the musicians were doing it in. And so she developed this very large range, and she would shift around. And she's a brilliant musician. And so that song was a song that I actually had never heard of. Everybody's Got a Home But Me. And it's just, everybody's got a home but me. And Van Dyke Parks made an amazing arrangement. But
And he's
great
certain
record.
he's certainly capable of doing that. I didn't know much about Van Dyke Parks until I worked with him, and then started to research him. Research who he was and what his accomplishments were and what his contributions
Very
were.
interesting, huh?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, the Beach Boys and all of that stuff. I mean, I wish I had. There's a lot. Again, there's a lot of people that I didn't get to know as well as I wanted to. That while I was in Los Angeles, and now, some of them have gone, some of them have passed, and I won't get a chance to hang with them. But you do what you do, and you.
You do. Yeah, but Nan Schwartz is a really great writer.
Yeah, I ran into her last time I was in Los Angeles at
Oh.
a Tierney Sutton concert. She was playing at Vitello's, and the sort of the after party there, Nan was there. But yeah, she's a very talented writer. But there were just that little list of any of these guys any of those piano players that I mentioned would be just huge if they were anyplace else. You know what I mean? But they're in Los Angeles. They're another one of the good guys.
Yeah, I know, it's amazing.
And
It's
Nan
amazing,
Schwartz
yeah.
or any of these writers. They're just how many big bands are there in LA? I mean, I never liked big band. I mean, that's what the truth is. I was never a big band guy. And being a piano player in a big band is like, hey,
Yeah.
So,
I know, that's really hard.
and I played in I subbed in Bill Holman's band, and I played with Scott
That's a
Whitfield's
good one.
band.
Yeah.
So I mean, I could hold my own in a big band, but I mean, it was never my thing. And now it's like I'm right that probably the last dozen arrangements that I've written are for big band.
Oh, wow. Well, I just had Kim Richmond on yesterday, and
I saw a bit of that. Yes.
that's an unusual big band, a little more modern.
Right.
But yeah, like you, I mean, I grew up with big bands, and so yeah, I mean, it's of course, and then again, any kind of music that you play really well is great. I remember doing casuals and playing with Tom Rainier, Memories. Remember that song?
Sure.
And anyway, it was fabulous. It was like to die
Oh,
for because of the musicians, playing it,
yeah.
But I mean, the song,
Yeah, well,
My Funny Valentine could be a good song, but it's
yeah.
just, when you've been a working musician and,
Well, Memories will never be a good song. I'm sorry. It's just doomed, so I'm afraid. Um, what was I going to tell you? You mentioned Casuals. Clark Keane.
Oh yeah.
This guy would put together a band. Again, it would be just the most amazing band almost any place else, and it would be playing on for somebody's bar mitzvah, and the players, the level of quality in these bands, and I think there was I don't want to get into it. These kids today rant, but what I came with, and I'm sure you're in the same boat, was that you did have to know the tunes.
Yeah.
You had to know the Great American Songbook standards, and you had to know the melodies, and you had to know the right changes, and you had to be able to do them in you had to do them in an odd keys for singers that came in and didn't know or couldn't do them in the standard jazz keys.
Yeah.
And so there was a whole set of repertoire and techniques that you had to have in order to function if you were going to make a living. This is way back when. And it really, I think it served me well. I mean, my dislike for big band had to do with just the not really doing too much in the piano part. Of course, that changed when I did play got to play with Bill Holman's band, where he writes nasty piano parts, where there's something there to play. But I think the tune is probably the having to know the tunes is the biggest thing that you carry with you. The harmonic structure, the formal structure, the being able to see how this melody works with that change, and it really helps you as a composer, helps you as an arranger. So this does, and I'm noticing that with my students, and have noticed for quite some time, that they don't have this sense of outrage when a chord doesn't resolve well. The chord, you and I would sit there and go, geez, no, that's not where that goes. That doesn't even make any sense. And they don't hear that it doesn't make any sense. So there's a sort of, I don't want to say it's an educational thing. I think it's a language thing. And,
Yeah.
and I don't mean because I'm in a foreign country. I mean, I think that the harmonic language, they're used to sort of letting things go the way anything goes, and not understanding that there's a tradition of chords going one way or the other, and not just in the jazz language, or in the jazz idiom, but in pop music. I mean, you listen to Carole King, any of those writers that were at the tail end, really, of the Great American Songbook tradition.
Yeah.
Billy Joel, I'm thinking that it's kind of at the end of it. They still, you could almost plug that formula into Gershwin. Maybe a little couple of changes here and there, but not substantial ones. Now it's very difficult to do that. You can't take a Billie Eilish tune and mistake it for I got rhythm.
Yeah. Interesting. That's true. That's really true. What are a few of the things that you find yourself saying to students? We all have our favorite kind of
Yeah, por favor. No,
But there's certain things that really work for each of us as teachers, that we feel kind of passionate about, and we've seen results that are good. So what are a few of those things that you say to students?
By means of encouragement, or
Yeah, well, yeah, definitely. You know,
or
something,
observations.
something to bring them out of like what you were just describing.
For me, it all is, I may be just terribly old-fashioned,
Yeah.
but analysis. Go listen, and I find that there is this. It's not just a Dominican thing. It's a generational thing. There is more music available to this generation than there ever was in my generation. When I was their age, when I was 22, 23, you had AM radio, maybe FM radio if you were really cool. And
Maybe you could go out into your dad's truck and listen,
yeah,
or something. Yeah.
yeah, and then you had a very limited amount of cable. There was no such thing, and
Yeah.
so there was but we were better schooled than they are, and this is the paradox. What I don't understand is why this generation has a difficult time finding music or understanding music and they have everything in the world available to them, and maybe that's the problem.
Well, I think it's a question of focus too, right? I mean, because it always is a question of focus, I think, probably, down to philosophical reasons or subjects, and career subjects, and you're at home subjects. Everything is really a question of focus. And so I think even though there's shitloads of stuff to listen to, they still have to have their job to do, their focus,
right. And that is my job, is to help them focus on those things. But for me, again, this is when I said I was perhaps a bit old-fashioned. Go and listen to it and write it down, transcribe it. Go and listen to whatever it is you're interested in, or whatever it is that we're talking about in theory class, or whatever it is we're talking about in music history. Go and listen to those things. And what I don't understand is, I think also, if I can make an observation about many in this generation, is that they are not as curious as I think they should be. If I could, fault them in one way or another, that would be the fault. It was why doesn't this interest you? Go listen to. Let's pick something easy. Go listen to Mozart Symphony No. 40, and when it comes to that part, bim ba bum 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 ba-dum, ba-dum, ba-dum. When it gets to that part, why is that there? it sticks out like a sore thumb. Why? Why doesn't that interest you? Why don't you say, boy, that's weird? And try to find out why he did that. And that, or that's just an easy one. There are tons of them based upon how difficult the subject matter you want to get into, whether it's a strange scoring thing, some weird thing that Tchaikovsky did, or why did Stravinsky write this thing that sounds like Bach? Why did he do that? What's the relationship there? And it's those kinds of things that I don't see. Those were the things that kept me up at night when I was a student. How does that work? How do you write something like that? I remember, and it's not only classical music. The new standard, the Herbie Hancock record.
Oh yeah, I love that record. Ooh.
Oh, what he does with, or what the band does with Norwegian Wood.
Yeah.
Just shoot me now. I remember, just listening to these counter lines that Herbie does, that just you as a composer, you go, that's not supposed to work. That doesn't work, and it works beautifully.
That's the great cool thing about music, isn't it? It's
Absolutely.
some of that stuff, it's not supposed to work, but it works. I've written songs like with an extra bar, and it's like I know that bar shouldn't be there, but it has to be there, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. If it works and it makes musical sense, I guess the question is why. And if you can dig and find out why that feels so good, that's going to help you. It's not an intellectual process. It's not an intellectual pursuit. It is, why does this is going to help you be a better musician, a player or composer or arranger or singer, what have you, And I think that's the thing that I would fault them on, is that they that lack of yearning to know. Kevin Axe told me once that he had a professor that set the first day of school, maybe it was a music history class. The first day of school, he sets everybody in a circle and says, get to know what's your name, where, blah, 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 blah. And then finally it's okay, who was the composer that brought Bach back into the consciousness of, made Bach relevant again? And in what year did he do that? And, some students, I have no idea, And the professor's answer was, don't you wish you knew? And then he'd go to the next student and ask another question and another question and another question. And his whole point was, I'm not trying to embarrass you. I'm trying to tell you that there is a long body of knowledge that you are trying to become a part of. You are trying to stand in line with this, with all of these people, and you don't know your history. This is like not knowing the name of your father or your mother or your grandparents or your uncles. I mean, you're now part of this family. You have to know the traditions of this family. And I think, what a wonderful thing,
Very cool.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Kevin, for relaying that story. I'm using it in the Dominican Republic even as we speak.
I want to hear do you have something you think on YouTube of you playing? I mean, like a smaller.
Do you want a fast thing, or do you want a slow thing? I have an orchestral thing but it's a bit long.
Uh-huh. I'm curious, Elegy for Bill Evans.
Sure, play it. That's the long one. It's 5 minutes, say almost 6 minutes. Play that one.
Okay. quite beautiful.
Why, thank you. That was an orchestra with Brian Bromberg and Dave Tull, and it was the rhythm and me with the rhythm section. And that was an elegy I wrote for Bill Evans. I've only done one solo record, and discovered again, as I told you, it was kind of a process of learning what I didn't want to do.
Yeah.
I didn't really enjoy the process of being a soloist. I don't like to be the guy out front. I'm much prefer being the musical director or the arranger or the producer. I much prefer that role. I'll play a solo. I'll do all of those things, but I didn't get the gene that makes me want to say, please love me, please love me. I don't have that.
Well, I think that's fine.
Because there are plenty of people that do have that gene, and they hire me. So
yeah, that's fine. So apparently it's worked out really well for you.
So far, so good. Yeah.
Yeah. Aunt Maro is saying beautiful, and those modest piano runs of yours, as you refer to them, are the absolute highlight of someone else's career.
I love him. He's such a great guy.
He's so positive, isn't he?
Yeah. Well, he's good reason to be. He's a monster player.
Yeah, he really is. I've been writing some lyrics to one of his songs. That's like my favorite one of my favorite Almaro songs. Then she smiles. Oh, she smile and then she smiles. Right. Mm-hmm. He wrote it for his daughter, and
well, I understand that.
It's really dun, dun, dun. That's the kind of beat. Dun, 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 dun. Da, 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 it's just really quite beautiful. I always love it when I hear him play it. I love it on the record, and I finally was like, I'm just writing lyrics.
Yeah. Probably
sing it in a different key and slower than he plays it, but
have you had Amaro on this show?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah, I was going to say he would be my next guest if I were you, but you've already had him, so.
He's really wonderful. Actually, the last real gig I did was with him and Carrie Frank on B3. So piano and B3, and that was the most fun gig.
No, you just made me think of Joe Bagg. I didn't put him on my list.
Oh yeah, man.
I mean, there's just this was just a thinking on my balcony. I mean, I did the same thing for bass players. Kevin Axe, Bruce Lett, Reggie Hamilton, Brian Bromberg, Brian McGillicuddy, Paul Moran, Edwin Livingston, Jeff D'Angelo, John Clayton, Dale Atkins, Jack Darrow, Putter Smith, Ottavio Bailey, who's not doing too much playing anymore, and Adam Cohen. I mean,
yeah.
And that's just
yeah.
And there's got to be 20 more that if you and I sit here, we go, oh yeah, I forgot about it. So
that's why I'm that's why I'm at no loss for people to invite
Jennifer Latham.
Jennifer Latham. She was on the show a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
I mean, it's my list of people to invite on the show is endless. I could be on here for years, actually, 6 days a week. In fact, I just spoke to yesterday. I spoke to David Amram. Are you familiar with him?
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, boy,
he's 112 or something like that.
He's going to be 90.
Yeah, I was close.
Yeah, but he's so interesting. Oh my God! And talk about energy. He's got endless energy, and what a career he's had.
He can talk with you about jazz, and he can talk with you about classical music equally well.
Yeah.
There was a guy I had as a teacher at USC. Oh, he was. I think he ran the theory department there. But I had him as it'll come to me. if anybody out there is listening to this and can remember for me, please send that in. He was
around what year was this?
95, somewhere around in there. Yes, it was 95 because my daughter was born in 95 and I had to miss it. I had to miss the final test because she was being born. But he was the head of the theory department, the classical, like very esoteric, hardcore music theory. But he taught jazz history course. And his knowledge of jazz was encyclopedic.
Wow.
And I just, there are those guys out there, like David Amram is one of them, and he's another one that can discuss these things interchangeably and with authority,
Yeah. Yeah, so interesting. I'm also going to have Michael Bennet on Saturday.
I just struck up a conversation with him. He was in Germany with VDR.
Yeah. And
man, his arranging. That guy is just marvelous. And there's another guy. Micah Bennet is great. And I called him, which I am wont to do. If I like somebody, I will call them and say, I really love what you do, And I said I did that with Micah Bennet, and he was very, very gracious and very kind, and he's just a great writer. So I hope you have a wonderful chat with him. Lex Jasper, do you know that name?
That sounds familiar.
Dutch. I think he writes for Metropole or that orchestra. And I mean, we tend not to know the guys, in Europe that well.
Yeah, sure.
Oliver Curling, and Wolf Kershak and a few. But Lex, check his stuff out. He's just a wonderful writer.
What is his last name?
I think it's Jasper or Jasper's. I don't know whether it was S or without the S. I think it's without the S.
Yeah. But
he's a wonderful, wonderful composer and arranger.
Scott Whitfield says, "Don't forget Hans Groener."
The first time I met
Larry Golding.
Larry Golding was Doug Webb was playing with him, and Doug invited me to go up and see him. So he's doing his thing, and with they're playing some tunes and this and that. And Doug comes to me, and I said, "Do me a favor." I said, "Introduce me as Johann von somebody." And so he introduced me as this friend of his from Germany, and I spoke with a very heavy German accent. And Larry's buying it. He's into it. And he's come over, and I'm speaking with him with this heavy German accent. And I said, I think you're a wonderful player. This excellent, excellent player. I said, but you are no Hans Groener. But I had reeled this in, talking about he just said, "Oh man."
That's hysterical.
But you are no Hans Groener.
Hans Groener, man. I could spend a while listening to Hans Groener. He's so great.
Yeah.
For those of you who don't know, who are listening, that's Larry Golding's
alter ego.
Alter ego. And he's funny. He like fixes Monk. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really funny shit.
I just love it when he pulls the accordion out of the box and nearly drops it. That's just great.
Oh God. Yesterday we were talking about the Jonathan and Darlene songs that we loved. It's just April in Paris.
Oh my God.
And Don't Get Around Much Anymore.
Yeah.
The beach.
I love Paris. I love Paris. Is my favorite.
Oh man.
I teach this course down here about arrangers. It's called I think it's called Arranging Styles from 1910 to the present. And I take about 100 names, about 100 arrangers, beginning early on through. I just added, I think, Nan Schwartz, and we'll be adding a few more. But it's a good course in kind of history course, but from the point of view of the arrangers that made a difference. And when we get to Paul Weston, I always play those tunes, with Jonathan and Darlene, and you get this funny look, like, is he serious? I mean, this is really really terrible.
I know, that's funny, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's why I don't play them on this so much, because if I did, people tuning in would be like, what the hell is going on?
What's she doing?
I did have Tim on though, and we did play a little, because you got to do that,
Yeah.
Dory said he thinks that you told me once your first instrument was bass.
I went to Berkeley actually as a bass player.
Oh.
And at that time, you couldn't get a piano room unless you were a piano player. If you weren't a piano player, you had to practice on Rhodes, on Fender Rhodes pianos. They had them set up in labs. And it was not my first instrument. Piano was my first instrument, but I really was intimidated. I went to Berkeley, walked down, to the interview process, walked down the practice room, and every piano player was a monster. They were all far better than I was. And I said, I don't stand a chance. This is never going to happen. And so I switched to bass, and I was working on Rhapsody in Blue. I mean, it was all of this classical stuff, with some Beethoven sonatas and some polonaises, Chopin, and this and that and the other. But I was really working on Gershwin at the time, and I said, I can't not have a piano. So I played bass for a while. Neil Steubenhaus was actually my bass teacher.
Oh wow!
And he left, and when he left, I spent about another 2 or 3 weeks, and I said, the hell with it. I'm gonna go and be a piano player. I'll toss the chips, let the chips fall where they may, and it worked out.
Okay. Yeah. Let's see. We're winding down. We have about 15 more minutes. I'm not. It doesn't have to be hard 2 hours, but I like 2 hours feels really good to talk to people.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you would like to share that I don't know about?
Well, let me look at something here.
What are you doing during this summer? Are you still teaching? Is the school open still, or does it?
Yes, we are teaching. Hang on just 1 second while I'm looking for this. We are doing everything online, like everybody else in the world, and trying to move our classes so that we're covering as much as we can. It's difficult because like with ensemble, it's very difficult to teach an ensemble via the internet, or with Skype or Zoom or anything else. So we're trying to, all music schools are going through that right now.
Yeah.
And in terms of the more academic courses, that's relatively easy to do. So we're using the typical tools, Moodle and all the rest of it to do our thing. But there's no real substitute for, people in a room, working on a project, you know. So
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't have any. I'm afraid I don't have good news about that.
Yeah.
I don't know what's going to happen with that.
What is happening down there, by the way? Is it spiking, or is it pretty under control, or people?
Well, we have been under a curfew. Unlike, I mean, it's very. I don't want. I can't get political.
No.
But they have done a better job in the Dominican Republic, I think, than the United States has done for keeping this under control. So we have been under a curfew for quite some time now, where it is, you know, we are 7 o'clock, nobody's on the street.
Oh.
From 7 o'clock until I think it's 7 o'clock.
Hmm.
So you get those 12 hours where there's nobody. And then I think it's 5 o'clock on the weekends. So they shut, you know,
Wow.
It's very difficult. My heart goes out to businesses, you know, and really now, I mean, both in this country and in the United States, I'm tore up about how, you know, I don't know what people are doing who made their living touring or who made their living exclusively as a player. You know, if you're a teacher, you have that you know, there's an income stream, you know, or if you publish music, or if you do this or do that. But if you make your living solely as a player, it's got to be very, very miserable. And I would like, they have done a good job at sort of flattening the curve in this country. I know of one student at the university that has COVID. I'm very close with people at the German embassy down here, and one of them has the disease, has just gotten over it, as the student at Donfu. And so yeah, it's nothing to play with, and they have done I think they have done a pretty good job at maintaining a pretty low number, you know, infection rate and hospitalization rate.
That's good. You know, I mean, as you know, there's so many different points of view that come up on the internet, right?
Mm.
And really, a lot of the people seem like they know. You know, they are researchers, they have jobs that, you know, would lead you to believe what they say, but they're so wildly different. I was just listening last night. Alan Alda has a blog and a podcast rather called Clear and Vivid, which is really, really cool. He's apparently like a science fanatic, and for several years has created this organization. Amongst other things, he actually goes and talks to scientists and trains them with his acting skills to speak normally so that we can understand them. And so he has on these really interesting people. He had on last week, I listened to the president of MIT, who is a guy who really came up from, you know, super poor, you know, and came all the way up to being the president of MIT. Last night, I listened to a scientist whose name is a little difficult for me to remember, but and she was a young woman, actually, strangely enough, like a real scientist with lots of history, but she's also the lead singer in a band called something like 1,000 names, or I didn't quite, I was just going to sleep when he said that part. But anyway, she was really smart, and it just, she explained, I was trying to tell my husband about this because he was just curious. He said, what makes the way she describes it different from any of these other people that you've been listening to? And it's just like you or me talking about a particular music thing. How you and I would both talk about it would be different because we're different people. It's not necessarily opinion. It's a point of view, right?
Yeah, and it's all of the experience that you bring to the table with that. Yours are different than mine.
Exactly. So that's what I found it really interesting. But he's very current. You know, he stays like now. You know, talks to people now, and so I highly suggest listening to it because it's really easy to listen to. And I mean, Alan Alda is one of those guys like James Taylor. You know,
Yeah.
You gotta love them, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, that's funny you should mention that. The James Taylor thing, I mean, he's been a huge influence on me forever. So and it's amazing because I think I started listening to him when I was probably 14,
Yeah.
and I'm not 14 anymore. and he's still around and making music, and I love that.
Yeah.
But I think that whole cadre of musicians, I think Dori Caymmi was that, James Taylor, that sort of, there is what I think has happened, at least it's my observation, that you're seeing so many of these jazz guys like Steve Gadd and Larry Goldings playing with people like James Taylor, and you're seeing these stylistic parameters perimeters melting away. And I Herbie doing a whole album of Joni Mitchell tunes, or the New Standard, that particular record. I think I'm very encouraged by that. I like that very much. I like that sort of thing, and it's not, it's not, by definition, it is fusion, but it's not jazz fusion in the sense that, we all understand that word to mean. But I think going back to that trio, just, for me personally, we're kind of bringing the topic full circle when I was saying, guys in Los Angeles would play a big old Ringo fill in the middle of a jazz show. And, I would listen when we would be on the road with Mangione or somebody, and Kevin Axe would be listening to this, and Dave would be listening to that, and we'd be sharing things that we were listening to and say, oh man, you got to check this out. I think the result of that, the cumulative result of that, is that you end up with things like the New Standard, where somebody's bringing, Herbie's with all of that tradition and all of that stuff.
Yeah.
Playing a Peter Gabriel tune.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it working, and it being, a very interesting thing. That guy, what's his name? Teaching now. I know him knew him from LA, but he's teaching at the University of Miami now. It has John Diversa.
Yeah, I had him on last week. What a smart guy.
Yeah, well, that's
talented.
That's what I'm talking about. I mean, that the Beatles approach that he did with big band.
Yeah,
I think it was brilliant.
Yeah, just beautiful.
I think and you've got Billy Childs doing
Laura Nyro,
and I mean there's all kinds of this. I think for me personally, I'm looking outside of that. I'm trying to find things in the Latin, because I live here. I'm trying to find things in the Latin world, and particularly in the Dominican world, that I can use as source material and do what I do. Do you know who Nestor Torres is?
Who is?
Nestor Torres is a flute player.
No, I don't think so.
Nestor is a flute player, Puerto Rican flute player, and or New Yorican, I don't remember whether he's from American or there. But I was doing a concert down here, and he suggested, this is maybe 3 years ago, and he said, I was talking to him, I really don't quite know what to do. And he said, well, what do you do? And I told him more or less what my style was. And it clicked with him. And he said, yeah, here's what I suggest. He says, continue to do what you do, but do it with a sort of a Dominican accent. And so the concert rolled around, and I was playing with Ramon Vasquez, a great Puerto
Yeah.
Rican bass player. And we did, I think it was Yesterday I Heard the Rain, which was
Yeah.
Manzanero tune, a Mexican composer. And we, instead of doing it as a bolero or something like that, I did it the way I do it. You know, with all of my jazz sorts of stuff, you know, and harmonizations and all of that. And the thing was that people understood the tune. People knew the song. And they really liked what I was doing with it. But so I was giving them something that they could relate to. I was giving them something they could hang on to, i.e. the melody. And then they would go with you. They will go with you if you can present it in a way that they understand, present music and a melody that they understand. They'll go with you. And Nestor was right. And I think that I learned from that experience that maybe I should be heading in that direction. So I'm kind of playing with that idea, how to synthesize that which is Dominican and that which is Latin in general, and sort of make it work with the way I do it, you know.
Yeah, that's that is definitely the path actually that you just described, the path of you and other musicians. You know, you look at something and then you bring all that you are into it, right? And make it work. I mean, sometimes for me, for instance, like I'll be singing with somebody who's, especially when they're very creative with substitutions behind me, I will just sing the melody. I mean, I love to alter melody, but I'll just sing the melody because it's so satisfying that way, you know.
Well, it
Here's the
makes,
melody, right?
you know,
Actually, Allison Wedding, a great singer who's now in Florida, she did this recording of "And I Love Him," the Beatles song, and it was real beautiful. The substitutions were real haunting, and when she got to "And I Love Him," she didn't sing "And I Love Him." She didn't sing, so da 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 da, right, and then it gets to ba da 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 da.
mhm.
And you actually had it in your head and everything, but it wasn't there, and it was so beautiful. The
Well, that's the whole
space was
thing. Yeah.
great. Yeah.
You know, we're running short of time, but I wanted to tell you, do you know Cyril Aimee?
Yes.
She did a clinic now, or a master class down here about 2 years ago, maybe a little more. And this, I'm telling you this as a singer. She did, I had a room full of singers that came to the class and wanting to pick up on whatever it was that she was talking about. And so she said, well, go ahead, so-and-so, go and sing this. And so the girl brought this music in. It was some bolero or something, you know, it was a Dominican song. So I'm playing the thing, and the girl is singing like that, big, and all of that. And Cyril stopped her and said, what, in your head, what version is it? I says, well, it was so-and-so's version. And she says, yeah, that's the version that has the big band and the dancing horses and the strings and and all of this. Yeah, that one. Do you realize you have a piano player? That's what you have. That's your orchestra. You're singing in your mind, you're singing with that big band, or you're singing with that orchestra. You're not listening to the piano player at all. And it's not working. And it really was an eye-opener to this girl. And it was an eye-opener for me from the point of view of helping singers going, you got to listen. You got to pay attention to your surroundings. You know, what is it? And we're back to the thing about this generation has more music than any generation prior has had to listen to, and they don't seem to be listening to it. You know? They're not developing those skills. But that was just an interesting thing. I think Cyril's a great teacher.
Cool. I've never seen her teach.
It's worth it. It's worth it. She's got her finger on the pulse.
Cool. Yeah, there's something I want to share with you that one of my things that I always teach singers, but it works for everybody, is I have this 3 universe idea. So the singer the singer has to first be in their first universe, which is them. They have to be competent in that universe and be able to do everything that they need to do, right?
Mhm.
And the second universe is that universe and the musicians. So in that universe, that's where creativity and co-arranging comes in, and where there's no mistakes, and because we're all creating together, right? And that's where the magic universe is. And then the third universe is those two, and it expands to the audience, because the audience is sharing those first 2 universes. But you have to do it that way. You can't start with the audience, although people do, because that's not where you're going to share the magic, right?
Yeah.
And you want the magic. You want to experience the magic, and also as an audience, I want to see the magic. I don't want to see whatever else is going to come up.
Gymnastics or what have you. Yeah.
Yeah, I want the magic. That's what I want. So, yeah, that's just one of the things that I share a lot with my students, to
It's a
get
good
them
thing.
in the right frame of mind,
Sure.
And it just gets them into the real depth of everything, and it gets them into the moment too,
Mhm.
And by the way, there's an idea too that I got out of a book by Elizabeth Gilbert, but it was so great. Curiosity is creativity, because you were speaking of curiosity before, with students, and what a great concept. And that actually is such a gift for some students, to realize that their own curiosity is their own creativity. It's a real easy connect.
Sure. Yeah, you're right on the money.
Well, Corey Allen, it's been really a pleasure speaking with you.
Likewise, thank you for the invitation.
It's been really fun. I have to say, as you were speaking, I kept thinking, I really like him.
Why, thank you. I really like you too. And I'm sorry we didn't get a chance to play with one another.
I know, me
was there.
too. We probably would have made great music together. Well, maybe we will in the future.
I look forward to that. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'll put you on that. I told you I always send out a list of people when I'm coming to town, saying, well,
Yeah,
okay,
please.
Yeah.
Yeah, put me in that list.
Do you like Korean food?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Well,
I like Korean and Japanese food. I'm like, hopelessly. Every time I go to Japan, they go, "Oh, would you like some American food?" I'm like, no,
no.
I do not want that. Just to tell people, tomorrow I have a day off, Corey. Friday is 3 singers: Kate McGarry, Shauna Tucker, who also plays great cello, and Lenora Helms. They're all from the East Coast. And then Saturday is Michael Bennet. Sunday is Becky Kilgore, who's another really great singer of the Great American Songbook, and her business partner, Tom Wakeling, a bass player.
Sure.
And I have a lot of great people coming. You can see it on my website. Also, for those of you who are interested, this Sunday, at about 3:00 Pacific Standard Time, I'm leading a Dave Mackay celebration of life. So if any of you are interested, if you knew Dave, you can send me information. Just check it out on my Facebook. I have a whole kind of bunch of directions if you want to be involved. And that's it. That's all I have to say. I'm not selling anything. You don't have to tip me even.
I'll send you that $50 that I was going to give out tomorrow.
Okay. What time is it there, Corey?
5:05.
Okay. Well, I hope you have a nice drink and have a great time and breathe in some of that beautiful sunshine and air for me. I'll be thinking of you there.
Thank you. I will do. All right.
Thanks again.
Take care.
Okay. Bye. Bye, everybody.